Well, how's everybody doing? Good? Good. I'm so happy to look across this room and see so many faces of people that I love and so many faces of people that I don't know, but I want to remind you that God knows you. He knows your story, and He's brought us here for a reason. I'm so grateful to have our friend Kayla Stoecklein here. Can we put our hands together one more time for Kayla? Thank you for taking the time to be with us. Thank you for being open to sharing your story, what you're walking through today. You have such a beautiful story of redemption and hope, even in the midst of walking through tragedy. And your story, I'm always amazed anytime you post, anytime you share, because there's so much hope and it's real. It's not just words. You're walking in such an authentic, open way, and I'm grateful for that. But tonight we're just gonna have a conversation that Kayla's gonna share her story. I think it's gonna speak to your heart. And I think that really for us, we just wanna get to know you tonight and to hear your story. Tell us a little bit, let's go back to the beginning. Tell us a little bit about you meeting Andrew, about your relationship, falling in love, meeting, getting married, starting a family. Tell us a little bit about that.
So Drew and I met at Vanguard University in Southern California, where we're from. It was my sophomore year of college, his junior year. We fell in love super fast. My mic is going in.
Oh, yeah.
Is it okay?
Yeah,
Can you guys hear me? Okay. This happened last time too. This is going to be a thing. So we fell in love super fast. We were like kissing in the rain after a Coldplay concert by the third date. Like we knew, ring by spring, like it was done. So we dated for a year, got engaged for a year, got married, and it was fantastic. He reached out through Facebook. Do you guys remember Facebook? That used to be a thing. Now it's Instagram.
Was all about it.
He asked for my number over Facebook. He was super hot. He was on a fixed gear bike, flexing his muscles, tattoos. He was a good looking guy. He was super special. Thank you.
It happened. This is the second time.
You guys.
Now we can hear you. That's all that matters. 2 mics, if that's what it takes. Come on.
Every picture I do an interview, it's going to be 2 mics. It's just going to be a thing. Got to roll with it.
Super hot. Like, we were right there.
Okay, this one's on. You guys good? Okay. Anyway, we fell in love really fast. He was really special. I was super proud to be his wife. We got married in 2010. And it kind of just ran hard and fast from there. There's so many things I could share about Andrew. I could sit here for hours and talk about the beautiful way that he impacted my life. He was one of my greatest teachers. I learned so much just being married to him for almost 8 years. There's a few things that I do want to share. The first thing that I'll always remember about Drew was his drive. Andrew was super driven, and it was super hot. It was so driven. It was really attractive. He was only 19 years old when he started out as the junior high pastor at his parents' church. And his responsibilities just grew fast from there. He had a huge heart and passion for the local church. He grew up in the church. His parents started it when he was 3 years old. So it was really built into him, and he was excited and passionate and full of ideas and vision. And in 2011, Andrew's leadership responsibilities grew even more when his dad was diagnosed with leukemia. His dad was the lead pastor of our church at the time, so it was devastating for our church and for our family. And Andrew stepped up even more. He was sitting next to his dad in the hospital. We have pictures of them next to each other in the hospital with their computers open, planning message series and planning the weekend and scheduling guest speakers. And he was speaking often, and he was only 23. So he just really hit the ground running with ministry. By 26, his dad was getting worse, so we felt like it was time to pass the baton. So we had a really special service. They wheeled his dad out in a wheelchair, and they had a baton that was engraved, and his dad literally handed Andrew a baton, and it was really, really special. And so instead of taking a break, his dad ended up passing away a few months later, and we were devastated. And Andrew's heart was always for the church. And so instead of taking a break, he went right back to work. He wanted to lead the church through their pain. He cared more about their pain than his. So he came back after 2 weeks and gave a series on heaven to lead our church through and to look up to heaven and to have hope. He was amazing, invincible even. It felt like nothing could stop him. The second thing I'll always remember about Drew was his deep love for his family. Andrew loved his people really well. He was a very private person, only a handful of close friends, but his family meant everything to him. His brother Austin was his best friend, and he was such a good brother to his sister Paige. He would have done anything for either of them. And as a husband, he honestly made me feel like the most beautiful girl in the room, on the stage and off the stage. He would say the typical pastor things that I'm sure Pastor Rich says too, like my smoking hot wife, super fun. But he was also just as amazing off the stage. And we had a really special relationship. Andrew also loved and honored his parents really well. He worked super closely with his mom up until his death, and they had a really special bond, unlike anything I've seen in a mother-son relationship, and something that I look forward to having with my boys one day when they're older. He also adored our sons. He was a really good dad. I think was there a picture?
Might have a picture, do we?
I mean, of the boys maybe.
So, yeah.
It might pop up there. Yeah, those are my boys. So Brave is the little one. He's 3 now. And then Jethro looks kind of angry to the right. He's 4. And then Smith is 6. So he was a really great dad. All the boys have big blue eyes like him. He adored them. And when I would get frustrated and kind of hit my wall as a mom, I was a stay-at-home mom, so we all have those moments. He would come and he would scoop them up and he would tell them, Mom is the queen of the house and we need to treat her like royalty. And it was like the best thing ever. My heart in all of this is broken the most for my boys. I hate that they aren't going to have their dad as they grow up. They were really proud of him, and we are and were very, very proud of him. One thing I think is really important to say about Andrew is that he was just like you. He was a normal guy. He loved the Lakers, very passionate about the Lakers. He had tattoos. He had a giant sweet tooth. He would eat candy in the middle of the night. It was kind of a problem. I would hear him pouring the M&Ms onto the bed. And sometimes I'd roll over and there would be M&Ms like melted into the covers of our bed. And in the morning, there would be a giant pile of wrappers on his side of the bed. It was so funny. And to this day, it's like one of the things that the boys remember about him and talk about. My 3-year-old Brave will remind me, Daddy loved sugar. So it's a funny memory. I love that. Andrew never wanted to be in the spotlight. He was content with what he had and where he was going and what he was building with the church. He was a really good man.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Such an incredible man, incredible son, incredible husband, father. Your boys are extraordinary. Spending time with them, it's a joy, and each one of them so unique, so special. And when you hear the story of how you guys met and you dove straight to ministry and the move of God that you're watching all around you, and even walking through the loss of his father, the real question that I think everyone is asking is, what happened? What happened over the last few years with his mental health that led him to a place to lose his life?
So in the fall of 2017, Andrew began to experience panic attacks. And if you've ever had a panic attack or witnessed a panic attack, you know it's like a full body experience. It would start in his chest with like deep chest pain, almost like a heart attack. And it would move like all the way down to his feet and all the way up to his eyes. I could see it in his eyes when he was having a panic attack. It's like his eyes were full of fear. And he started having them, and at first they weren't as bad, just more surprising, like what's going on. And they continued like 3 or 4 times a week. He would have these debilitating panic attacks, usually at night when he was trying to fall asleep. and they would keep him up, and it was super frustrating, and there was nothing I could do to help. He would pace around the bedroom. He'd curl up in the fetal position on the floor, shaking, crying, praying, like anything to get his body to snap out of it. So those kept happening, and the whole time we thought it was his thyroid. He had issues with his thyroid before, and if you Google hyperthyroid, he met like all the criteria for hyperthyroid. So we did some thorough testing on his thyroid, and it turned out that it wasn't his thyroid, and the panic attacks, instead of getting better, kept getting worse. They got so bad that a security guard found him on the bathroom floor just minutes before he was supposed to be on stage to give the very first Easter service, April of last year. So the next week, he ended up in the hospital, and we all said, enough is enough. We're sick of living like this. We got to get to the bottom of this. He can't live like this anymore. This is torture. So we put him on a sabbatical. Our lead team got in front of the church and told them, really honestly, like, he's having panic attacks, and he has anxiety, and he's tired. He never took a break. So they were very, very gracious, and they didn't put a time limit on it. They said, you know what, take as much time as you need, and we want you to get better. So right away, he started seeing a psychiatrist, and he was diagnosed with depression. I remember sitting in the psychiatrist's office when we found out, and I'll never forget it. The psychiatrist looked me straight in the eye and said, your husband has depression. And I don't know why, but I was shocked. We're sitting in a psychiatrist's office, so you would think I would know, what to expect. But I was so shocked. I was stunned like a deer in the headlights that I didn't say a word. We walked silently to the car, and as soon as we got in the car, I just started bawling. And I remember saying out loud to Andrew, how did we end up here? Like, how did this happen to you? This guy that's like Superman, like leading our church and our family through everything. Like, how did this happen to you? But the doctor was super hopeful. They said he was on the low end of the spectrum. He's going to bounce right back. Like, we're confident he just needs to get some rest. Like, no big deal. And so I was kind of resting in what the doctor said. So from April to July, Andrew rested and wrestled with depression and anxiety. He spent most of his days back in the bedroom, and when he would come out of the bedroom, I wouldn't really know what to expect. Some days he'd be angry, some days he'd be sad, he'd walk out crying. Some days he'd be happy and want to go to the beach. It's like every single day it was different, and I kind of just tried to give him his space and let him do whatever he needed to do to get better. He was experiencing some really thick spiritual warfare too, that just kept adding fuel to the flame that was already blazing inside of him. Andrew, though, was running to God. He was running to God. I can close my eyes and vividly remember walking into the bedroom, and he has his big headphones on, and he's laying in the bed, and I can hear the worship music through his headphones. That's how loud he's playing it. And he was trying so hard to beat this thing, and he was confident, that he would. We were doing everything, too, to get him better. We were seeing a psychiatrist every other week. We were seeing a counselor together for 2 hours every week. He was going on solo trips by himself. He went and sat with a mentor for a week. We went on a trip, just the two of us, which is a really big deal when you have a house full of kids. Anybody that's married with young kids, take a trip without the kids. I am so glad we did that. That's such a special memory that I'll hold close to my heart forever. So at the end of July, the doctors actually thought that it would be better for Andrew to go back to work. They were seeing progress. I wasn't really sure, but they thought too much time away would actually not be good for Andrew. So they thought going back would be the next right thing. So he came back on August 1st, less than a year ago, and he gave 2 powerful messages on mental illness. He called the series Hot Mess, and you can actually go online and watch the messages. And in it, he was super honest. He was talking about depression. He was talking about anxiety. He gave out the suicide hotline number. He gave out information from the NAMI website. He knew, he knew where to go if you were struggling. He knew the statistics. He had all the right answers. But unfortunately, on August 23rd, just a few weeks later, he was gearing up for his third installment of the Hot Mess series, and he had a really bad day in the office. There was a trigger, and kind of spiraled out of control, and unfortunately, the next morning is when he attempted suicide. And we were shocked, stunned, like never saw it coming, not him, like rattled. He ended up in the hospital. We had him on life support. And I remember, hospital beds are pretty small. And I remember laying like as far as I could, kind of close to him on the hospital bed and holding him and crying and begging God, like, God, please, like, this is not happening. Like, God, we need a miracle. I was playing the same songs he was playing in the bedroom. There's one song in particular by Mosaic. I heard they're going to be here next week. They're amazing. There's one song called Miracle that we were playing over and over and over and over again in that hospital room, and we were begging God for a miracle. And unfortunately, that's why I'm sitting up here. We didn't get the miracle we were looking for. And on the 25th, he went to be with Jesus. Way too soon. A man with so much potential, only 30 years old. And I was absolutely, and still am, absolutely devastated.
Even as you say that, I think for all of us listening, you say it so bravely.
Yeah.
And with so much strength. I think for all of us in this room, it's impossible to even take in the weight or the gravity of what you're speaking out right now, what you've lived through. I think it for all of us, it brings up a litany of different questions, of feelings, of emotions. How have you processed your own emotions and feelings towards Andrew during this time?
Yep. That's tough with suicide. I mean, there's such a stigma surrounding suicide, and it's been a process the last 10 months for me in processing those feelings towards Andrew. And it can change from day to day. There's some days where I'm just miss him, and then there's some days where I'm like talking to him at the cemetery, like, like frustrated. But the most important thing I want to stress is that this was not Andrew's fault. There are days where I walk around my house and I literally shake my head and say out loud, Andrew, 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 you did not want to die. Like, that's the most frustrating part about suicide, is that they didn't want to die. He did not want to die. He had so much to live for. And I truly believe to my core that the suicide was not a choice. It was not a decision. And that's why we say the phrase died by suicide instead of saying chose to take his own life or committed suicide. It's not a choice. So we say died by suicide. Andrew loved his life. Andrew loved his family. Andrew was in his dream job. We were living in our dream home. He had everything he could ever want. This wasn't supposed to happen to him. But I do know it wasn't a selfish act. That's also a misconception with suicide, is people think it's selfish. I was getting my nails done a few months ago, and it just came up with the lady that was doing my nails. I'm very open, probably too open sometimes with my story. And I just told her, my husband died by suicide. I'm a widow. And she, like, without skipping a beat, looked at me and said, that is so selfish. And I was kind of taken aback, and I had a friend sitting next to me, and she was like, I could tell, like, ready to pounce, this lady, like she was shocked that she was saying it too. And I looked her straight in the eye and I said, it was not a choice, and it was not selfish, and he was sick, and it was ultimately the illness that took his life. And I will stand by that until I get to see him again. Yeah.
I think we can all say that we look forward to meeting Andrew one day on the other side of eternity.
Yeah.
A great man.
Yeah.
And he loved well. He loved Jesus well. He loved you well. He loved his sons well. And I heard you say a couple times the word spiritual warfare. And there is a huge difference between spiritual health and mental health. Can you talk for a minute just about your experience with both and the difference between the two?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say in Andrew's case, he was suffering like immensely from both. And they're both real. Spiritual warfare is very real. There's a real enemy who wants to kill, steal, and destroy. And Andrew was experiencing that like in a very real way. I think he had a gift to where, he could sense things and see things and feel things differently than most of us do. And it was very intense for him, very real for him. And mental illness is real too. And so I think the best thing we can do is address both separately. They're not the same thing. We can't treat them the same way. There are real tools we can use to fight against the spiritual realm, like prayer and community and fasting and spending time in the Word. And there are real, tangible things that we can do to help battle our mental health, like doctors and medication and therapy. They're two completely separate things. I believe in miracles, and I believe God can heal anyone at any time. So I'm not trying to limit God when I say this, but I will say that I think it would be ignorant to think we could simply pray someone's mental illness away. Mental illness is not a byproduct of not being spiritual enough or spending enough time with God. So we have to do a better job of that, of loving on people that are suffering. It's a real illness, yeah.
So good.
Another thing that I want to say is that we need to become better learners instead of critics. We jump to criticism so quickly, and instead we need to seek to understand. There's 4 little words that my mother-in-law shared with our church a few months ago, and the words are, I have no idea. I have no idea. These 4 words have the power to change the way we approach people. They have the power to change us and stop us from saying something critical of others. So the next time we're headed towards criticism, we can change our heart when we stop and say, I have no idea about their story or their history. I have no idea what burdens they're carrying. I have no idea what it's like to live with what they're living with. I have no idea what's going on inside their mind. I have no idea. That's the truth. We have no idea what it's like to walk in anyone else's shoes but our own.
That's the truth.
Yeah.
We have no idea. I think that that's something, a phrase that we all need to take to heart and that we need to use in our everyday language and conversations. What have you learned about supporting those that you love who are walking through mental health issues, whether it's a spouse, whether it's a coworker, a friend, a family member?
Yeah.
What have you learned about the best ways to support?
Hindsight's really 2020. I have a very, very long list of regrets, huge list of regrets. I wish so badly I could go back and save him. And with suicide, the first 3-6 months are spent doing that in your mind. You go back and you think about all the different things you could have done to save him. One way I've been helping people and reaching out to people and sharing my story is through our family blog called God's Got This. It's godsgotthis.com. We started the blog when Andrew's dad was diagnosed with cancer, and we made these little wristbands. I have one on, and they say God's got this on them, and we've sent them all around the world. It's been a really cool phrase, powerful phrase for our family, and means so much to us. It reminds us that we are not alone, that God has a redemption plan more beautiful than we could ever fathom, and that he's with us no matter what we're up against. So when Andrew died, I went to the blog and started sharing my heart right away. Our story really went viral and spread fast, and there was all this speculation going on about him and people trying to define who he was. And so I felt in my heart, I want to honor him and protect him. So I wrote a letter to him, and I wanted his life to be defined by the way he lived, not the way that he died. So I've kind of just been blogging since. It's kind of turned into this living, breathing journal for our family. And there's one blog post in particular, going back to your question about how to help people. There's one blog post in particular that I share really often. I have people reach out to me every single day, every single week, asking what they can do to help. It's a 1 in 4 people suffer from mental illness. So the chances of you knowing somebody that's walking through it, or the chances of you knowing somebody that's loving somebody that's walking through it, is pretty high. So I wrote this one blog called Uncharted Territory, and in it I share 3 things that I wish I would have done. The first thing is to take it seriously. I'll never forget the one and only time that Andrew vaguely mentioned suicide. And it was so vague that I missed it. He kind of shrugged it off as like a passing thought. I asked him if he Googled it. He said no. I asked him if he would do it. He said no. And we have this shame around suicide. So I was like, okay, cool. He said no. I don't want to ever talk about it again. I kind of put it away and never brought it up and didn't tell anybody that he said it, kind of acted like it never happened. And if I could do it all over again, I would have called the suicide hotline number right then and there and just asked what to do. It's a resource. It's not a number that you call when someone's in the act. It's a number that you call anytime. I could have called and just been like, hey, my husband said this. What should I do? The number is 1-800-273-8255. You can look it up online if you ever need it. But I wish I would have taken it seriously, and that's one of my biggest regrets. Another piece of advice that I have is to treat it as a team. I was so busy chasing after 3 boys that I wasn't able to make it to every doctor's appointment. I went to the counseling appointments with him, but I probably only went to 3 psychiatrist appointments, and that's a huge regret that I have. So if you're walking alongside somebody, the best thing you can do is treat it as a team. Try to have somebody else with them at every single appointment to be able to share the truth about what's going on at home, because that person, it's not their fault, they're sick. So they can't really articulate how they're feeling, and you get to help. It's a team. So treating it as a team is important. I wish I would have moved mountains to be at every single appointment. My third piece of advice is to read the books. Mental illness invaded my life in so many ways, but I refused to let it invade my quiet time. So I was reading books about marriage and parenting and, other things. I didn't want to read about mental illness. I didn't want to talk about it or think about it anymore. But that's a huge regret that I have now. I wish that I would have grabbed any and every book I could have got my hands on about what we were walking through. Although my list of regrets is never ending, at the end of the day, I gently and confidently reassure myself this is not my fault. Ultimately, the mental illness caused the suicide. I grieve because I loved him so much. There's this beautiful quote that says, human love takes us into dark places where we are taught the hardest things. Those we love suffer, and as we love them, we suffer with them. Ultimately, we lose them. The hard work of love is to see each other through, in sickness and in health, and often into death. We can't mourn what we haven't loved. Those who mourn are those who love. The cost of love is great. Jesus knew that all too well. It cost him everything. The beautiful thing is that we know our grief won't last forever. This is just the first inch of life. We were created for a person and a place, and the person is Jesus, and the place is heaven. Yeah. We're going to have trials in this life, but we serve a God who will never let us down. No matter how great the pain, no matter how deep the loss, no matter how high the mountain, God will heal us, God will hold us, God will guide us, and God's always got this.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. God's got this. I love that that's the name of your site and what you've really held on to as the declaration as you walk through sorrow and grief. I think that the practicality that you just laid out so clearly could change the trajectory of relationships in all of our lives if we would really take it to heart. You so beautifully described how we can support. But now, if you don't mind, can you share with us the things that haven't helped on your journey? Because I think some of us, our deepest desire is to help. And when people that we love dearly are going through the toughest times in their life, sometimes we don't know what to say. And sometimes the things that we say hurt even more than the things if we weren't to say anything at all. And I think that all of us in this room, we want to learn how to support by what to do and what not to do. Tell us some things that haven't helped along the road.
Yeah, we all walk through pain. No one's exempt from pain. We're all going to walk through a season of pain in our life. There's one phrase that I despise. It's, I know exactly how you feel. No one knows exactly how you feel. It's like that phrase, I have no idea. No one knows exactly how you feel. Don't compare pain or loss. That's another thing, people try to do just to try to relate. It's not out of bad intentions. It's just trying to relate. But the truth is you can't relate because everybody's pain and grief and loss is different. Grief can be really awkward and uncomfortable, but the best thing you can do, the worst thing you could do is to not show up for your friends. So the best thing you can do is to keep showing up. Don't be the friend that stops showing up 6 months in, a year in, 2 years in. Be the friend that keeps being there for them. Their life will never be the same. Even though your life has moved on and your life has kept going and it hasn't dramatically affected your life, their life has changed forever and they need friends. The best question you can ask somebody that's walking through pain is, how can I serve you?
So good. How can I serve you? I think all of us can think of people in our life that tonight we could ask that question. That we could reach out and pose that question and really desire to meet the need. As you look across this room today, how would you want to encourage the people in this room to be proactive in caring for their own mental health?
I think a lot of us would say we're not very good at this. It's easy to encourage others to care for their mental health. It's easy to tell a friend, well, you should work out, or you should see a counselor, or you should rest, or you should eat better. And we don't do the best job of actually modeling that and doing that ourselves. So we can all do better at that. I wanted to say something quickly about pastors specifically, and that is pastors are people too. Pastors aren't superhuman, they're human. They're not invincible. We're all just broken vessels giving it our best shot to be a light in a really dark and desperate world. The best thing you can do to support the mental health of your pastors is to pray for your pastors. From my experience as a lead pastor's wife, I know how hard and lonely it can be at the top. Lead pastors these days are under so much pressure to perform. It's easy to see the lead pastor in the position that they hold and think they don't need prayer. But the truth is that they do. Leading a church is a really heavy burden to carry, one that is very costly. So we can pray for them as a staff. You can create a staff culture that's unified, and we can encourage our pastors to also take care of their mental health. The key to being a bright light for anybody, no matter what your vocation is to be intentional about our mental health. We have to do a better job at caring for ourselves so that we can keep caring for others. We must give ourselves permission and margin to heal and rest. And here's a couple ways we can do that. The first is to take a Sabbath. I would encourage all of us to take 1 day a week off, completely off, and to fill it with things that you enjoy, things that fill your tank. Maybe it's going for a walk at the beach. Maybe it's grabbing coffee with a friend. Maybe it's laying on your couch all day and not moving at all. Whatever you need to do. For me, it's paddleboarding. I love paddleboarding. I love being out on the water. I feel connected to God. I feel connected to Andrew. I feel like the pole of heaven. That's my spot. Find what you want to do on your Sabbath and do it. Whatever it is, just make it relaxing and fun. The other thing is to celebrate often. I know you guys are good at this at VU. It's one of your values here, right? Is to celebrate often. So you guys are already doing a good job of that. But have people over for dinner. Make life fun. Make everything a celebration, even the little things. The other thing is a personal retreat day. This is different than a Sabbath. This is a once a month day to go and have solitude time with God. Solitude's different than Sabbath. Solitude's intentional. Solitude is sitting with God and praying to God and journaling and reading the Bible and just soaking in God's vision, catching God's vision for your life. It's not scrolling through Instagram. It's not binging Netflix. It's not the laying on your couch day. It's a day where you sit by yourself and figure out where you're headed with God. And the last piece of advice that I have is just counseling. Counseling is the best thing you can do for anybody at any time in your life. I've been in counseling the last year, and I'm going to be in counseling for a really long time, but it's been incredible for me, and it's a tool, it's a resource, it's work. I kind of dread going because it's work. It's like working out, where you dread going and you're no, I don't want to go, but then after you feel so good, you feel relieved, and that's one of the best things you can do. And you can share everything with your therapist. Maybe you don't have people in your life you can trust that you can share things with, and that's what a therapist is for you to be able to sit and share everything without worrying about losing your job, without worrying about losing your friends. Like, there's things that come up during the week that would not be good to tell your friends. You know, you can like pocket those and save those for counseling. So counseling's been great. The last thing I want to say is if you're struggling, tell somebody. Don't let your secrets be your downfall. Find 1 to 2 safe people in your life and tell them everything. And maybe it's the counselor if you don't have those people in your life. The enemy wants you to feel isolated. The enemy wants you to feel unloved and worthless. But I'm here to tell you that your life matters. Your story matters, and you are loved, and you are valued more than you could ever imagine, and God has a great plan for your life. No matter who you are, no matter your past, no matter your mistakes, no matter your mental health, God's got you, God's got this, and God can do impossible things.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. Amen.